What is the scariest oh hell no experience you've had? Early one morning I was leaving a hotel and a man followed me to my car. I jumped in quickly and locked the doors as my butt was hitting the seat. He knocked on my window and I let it down only about 2 inches. He tried his best to convince me I dropped a key in the parking lot and should get out and get it. It was a ploy and I knew it. I finally looked him in the eye and said, "No, not me." He knew I meant that he wasn't getting me. I wasn't scared, but instead furious. I left before he did and hurried to get onto the interstate. With heavy 5-lane traffic he came flying up behind me and then right before slamming into me he darted left between cars, almost causing an accident. I couldn't report him because I left so quickly and didn't get his plate number. I never stayed at that hotel again while traveling that route. Worked at a coffee shop. One of the baristas was cleaning the bathroom. Hear her literally yell, "Yep, she comes to get me," saying I need to take care of a weird looking spider. I love bugs and get kind of excited to catch and release the weird looking spider outside. Walk into the bathroom and it's not a spider, it's a fracking scorpion. I encountered a rattlesnake 3 hours ago at the gym when grabbing a plate. Was watching TV, sitting on my couch when I saw the silhouettes of 3 me, one with a gun drawn, walking up to my door. They knocked on my door. I didn't respond and sat there with my crappy little shotgun. They started knocking loudly, I guess to make sure if anyone was home. Then they started to pry open the door with a crowbar. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the dudes were gone. The men who were trying to break in were standing next to a broken window the entire time. When I was 10 or so, I woke up before everyone in the house. It was like 7 AM, and decided I would sneak into the pool. I was waist deep in the water before I saw the alligator on the other side of the pool. I was 4 years old and I lived with my grandparents at the time. My grandparents' house was not fully developed and bugs and spiders would come in the showers and kitchen. When I was finished doing my business in the bathroom, I tried to go back outside again but there was a huge snake in the kitchen so I couldn't get past. All I was doing was screaming until someone heard me. Trekking through the woods behind my friend's house while playing manhunt. Midnight in December. No sensible reason for anyone to be outside. Snow everywhere. I'm walking along and approach this ramshackle cabin. Hear a faint squeaking of a swing set moving back and forth. Audibly to my friend, who was with me, I say, "What the frick is that dead?" Fricking. Silence ensues. The swing stops moving the minute I stop talking. I'm not known for my running but I think I broke land speed records that day. I did community service at the local hospital. One of my duties were to deliver the food menus early morning to every patient so that meant starting my rounds around 5-6 AM. The first floor was ICU and it was still fairly dark around that time. I walked into a patient's room and all the blinds were shut and the only light that lit the room came from the equipment she was hooked up to. I wasn't sure if she was awake or not and so I announced myself and waited for a response. Sometimes patients were unable to make meal choices and so I would stick around to help them out. I stood there for a couple seconds and saw her eyes closed shut. Thinking she was still asleep, I made my way towards the door. Halfway through, with my back towards her, I hear her say, "Make sure they don't follow you out." I stopped in my tracks and slowly turned around and saw that her eyes were still closed and quickly ran the frick out of there. There was no one in that room except her. I was staying alone in a hotel room in advance of a friend's wedding. It was my first time traveling alone and since the wedding was in San Jose and I live in LA so I was about 8 hours from home to add to it. Around 2 AM I hear someone trying to use a key in my door and pounding on it frantically to try to get in. That was a really huge oh hell no moment for me. Luckily enough for me I had experience working in a hotel that was a little too free with their master key so I'd engage the deadbolt on my door whenever I was in it. I was so glad for that deadbolt that night. I was in the very ill from pneumonia. Think 4 staff in the cubicle with me the entire time for about an hour while they diagnosed what was wrong with me. I originally went to urgent care and sat in the waiting room for 45 minutes and the moment they triaged me, they sent me to the ER. Anyway, after about an hour and a max of 10 people in working on me at once, I had an IV in each arm and everyone left. I was completely alone, still going in and out of consciousness because of low O2 sat whoops. Turns out I'm allergic to one of the antibiotics. By the time I noticed, my hands and wrists were too swollen to hit the call nurse button, and so I was just flailing my sausage arms at the equipment as hard as I could. Not very, until someone came to check on me. It took the staff maybe 30s to figure out what was wrong with me once they came in, but it was some of the longest 30s of my life because I couldn't communicate with them and I had come out of the frying pan and into the fire. At least I knew it was anaphylaxis and wasn't just suddenly dying from a car accident in my early 20s. I was driving around a bend under a freeway on my last lesson before going for my probationary license when a car driving at least 70 km per hour over the limit, 160 km per hour in a 90 km per hour zone, about 100 miles per hour in a 55 zone, smashed into my rear driver's side. The car I was driving spun out of control and smashed into an underpass. My teacher and I were both desperately lucky to be alive, though we both sustained serious injuries. I stepped into an elevator on the 8th floor of a hotel and hit the 10th floor button. Right before the doors closed, a group of at least 15 people jammed themselves in while I'm standing in the back corner. The elevator was rated for 10 adults. Instead of going up, the elevator slowly started to go down. After half a floor, the elevator went into free fall for roughly 2 floors until the emergency cable caught. I thought I was going to die that day. Last week when I started the BBQ, went inside to grab the things, and came back out to see the entire grill and top of the tank entirely engulfed in flames. Apparently we had a leak we didn't notice. I managed to throw water on the tank and cut the flames ASAP, so thankfully no real damage, but I think I'm done BBQing for the year. There was a spate of sighting in the UK where people dressed up as clowns and stood on the street and just stared at people. Doesn't sound scary until one night I was walking home. It was dark early and there was a clown on the corner of my street. I actually said out loud no and turned around. I proceeded to cut through people's gardens and enter my back door that way. When I was in Mexico, I was staying on a decent sized resort with a good amount of wildlife. When we first arrived, an employee warned us about the possibly aggressive wildlife, spider monkeys, lizards, fish, etc. on the trails and in the waters. These trails had cenotes, gardens, historical pieces and a bunch of other cool stuff. I wanted to see a pre-Hispanic oven offered as a historical piece, so I walked down a dirt road in the furthest corner of the resort. Resort is about 6-7 square miles, to see this oven. On my way out, at least 30 of these freaking lizards were lined up making all sorts of sounds at me, with their necks all flared up and stuff. Also, at the resort they told us to stay on the trails, because of other potentially dangerous wildlife. But I was cornered by 30 of these freaking things in nothing but wet shorts and sandals. How do you prepare someone for a situation like that? I said frick the trails and I ran through those woods faster than I have ever ran before. Not quite sure what those little guys wanted from me. I've posted this before somewhere, but I used to work the night shift all the time, and basically shifted my whole sleep schedule over to that, wake up 7 PM every day. It was fine save for the fact that every now and then I'd have to do my grocery shopping at like 10 PM, which wouldn't be so bad if I also didn't have epilepsy, which means I can't legally drive. So I bike everywhere, usually listening to podcasts on the way. One day I was on my way home from shopping and got to my driveway. It was one of those super long rural driveways that so many creepypasta people will go into a long 4-page long description of how creepy it is. It wasn't creepy, really, just secluded. Anyway, it's a long drive through the woods and I'm used to all kinds of animals jumping out and running by as I'm going down the road, but this day something felt off. I saw an animal jump out into the middle of the drive and I just stopped waiting for it to scurry off. I honestly thought it was a deer, because they're stupid and everywhere. But then my lights caught the eye shine and I realized it was way too low to be a deer. My next thought was, oh great, it's one of the coyotes that we keep seeing in the backyard. I unplugged my headphones and turned my music up as loud as it'll go. I had a Lumia 635, which had a loud as frick speaker. I started stomping my feet and trying to scare the dumb coyote out. I was shining my lights out on it. It just stood there, staring at me, and then it got low to the ground and sulked towards me. I realized immediately this was not a deer or coyote or even a neighborhood dog escaped. It was a freaking mountain lion that was now slowly approaching me. I backed my way out of the driveway, making sure not to lose eye contact with the animal, and then busted my ass down the hill to my job, only place open at that hour within immediate biking distance. I wasn't 100% certain it was a mountain lion at seeing it skulk. I just knew it was not any of the animals I'm used to seeing and that it was acting aggressive defensive towards me being there. The only reason I know it was a mountain lion was as I turned the corner on the top of the hill, I tilted my head to make sure nothing was following me, to see another, maybe the same one, sitting on a rock wall literally 4 feet away from me. It normally takes me 30 minutes to get to work. It took me only 10 minutes that day. Bro, please leave a like and subscribe to Redupe for more cool content.